Stress is inevitable, but your response to it is optional. In today's episode, I share with you 3 strategies to become more resilient to stress. Welcome back to my show where high achievers get productive, get promoted, and get the corner office. Make sure to like and subscribe because I have new episodes coming your way every Wednesday to help you accelerate your career. Stress can be a vehicle to growth, but only if you are resilient to it. In fact, resilient is your ability to recover after a challenge. And this can lead to your growth, but for a lot of people, they don't think about the resilience aspect of this, and stress can lead to a decline in morale, productivity, focus, and even your health. So let's shift this whole view on stress and shift into something more positive when it comes to resilience. Tip number 1 is to differentiate stress from strain. And this comes from one of my mentors, Dan Newby, who wrote the great book, The Unopened Gift, all about emotional intelligence. Now, when it comes to stress versus strain, I find it helpful to think about it on a bell curve. A bell curve is a lot like this. And on this side, we have growth. And on this side, we have the stress level. Now, as you can see, it works on a bell curve because initially the stress helps you grow, right? You go up the bell curve here and it helps you grow. It pushes you, it makes you innovate and be creative. And in fact, if you're not a little bit stressed, you're probably not growing very much. The learning curve is steep and it can feel a little bit uncomfortable. And then you get up to the top part of the bell curve here, and then suddenly you find you're like in maximum growth mode, and you want to be in that maximum growth zone because it helps you and your team accelerate. But then as you get down on this other side, you get into this other side where your productivity begins to decline because the stress can become extreme. That's right, the stress can become extreme and you get into the strain zone, and strain's not a great place to be. So the key is when you're thinking about your resilience to stress, you want to think about it almost. And another metaphor is like working out. When we're working out, we're actually tearing our muscles down, okay? And it's what challenges do. That's what stress does. It does tear us down. But the key is we need that. It helps the muscles grow back stronger, okay? Strong back stronger and able to take on more and higher challenges down the road. So differentiate between stress and strain. Keep yourself in the growth zone versus the strain zone. You start getting in the strain zone, it's time to take a step back. Which leads us to point number 2, to strategy number 2, which is to simply increase your rest by 30 minutes a day, okay? Just 30 minutes a day. This can make all the difference. You may not have time for an extra hour per day, but just add 30 minutes because the world looks better through well-rested eyes. Or you might be thinking of another way is you can turn any mountain into a molehill. Any mountain into a molehill by getting a little extra sleep. It's amazing how a good night's rest can make a huge impact. This comes up for me sometimes, or maybe I'm feeling a little down at night and I'm questioning why me when it comes to big challenges. And oftentimes my wife will say, Ben, is the challenge really that big? Or you just need a little extra sleep because you're tired. 9 times out of 10, or maybe 9.5 times out of 10, it's just because I need a little more sleep. And we all do. You've probably had that same situation where it seemed like a big insurmountable problem for you, your team, your family. Then you slept on it, and then the next day, even if you had a rough night's sleep, the next day it seemed more manageable because that is how resilience works. So if you add 30 minutes of sleep or even 15 minutes of sleep to your day, it has cumulative positive effects and it will make you more resilient. Now I'm about to roll into tip number 3, but before I give that to you, make sure you stick around to the end of the video because I'm gonna tie all this together with a very personal example of how I use this final strategy to boost my own personal resilience. Number 3 is to craft a helpful narrative. Now you may be thinking about stress, having a narrative or a story about stress. Ben, what in the world are you talking about? Well, it turns out our minds are always telling stories. In fact, if you think about things from your past, they usually have a narrative attached to it. But here's the big secret is nothing has any meaning until we assign it. And we assign it via narrative. Now, when it comes to stress, and resilience and being resilient to that stress, turns out the narrative has a big impact. Big impact. Did I say big? Yes, a big impact. And that's because we have, as human beings, a natural negativity bias. Now, I can't remember exactly who coined this phrase, negativity bias, but it's essentially that it's from our own evolution as human beings. It's one of the reasons we've survived for so long as a species. It's because of this negativity bias where we're constantly surveying the horizon for tigers, for bears, for lions, for prehistoric, dangerous, scary things, because we're a little paranoid about it. And that's because we're a little more paranoid about things, we survive. Well, congratulations. You've evolved to the point where most people are not afraid of these scary animals anymore. So we don't need to worry about that quite as much. So it's important, though, to think about the narrative that you're assigning to stressful moments. What's the story that you're creating? Does this lead to resilience and growth, or does this lead to sadness and more stress and just not getting more stuff done? Now I'm going to walk you through 3 different narratives that you can assign to a stressful situation for you, your family, or your team to help you assign a much more empowering narrative and thus increase your resilience. Number 1 is probably my favorite right out of the gate, which is the growth narrative. That's right, the growth narrative. The growth narrative is this stressful experience is helping me grow. I'm going to develop and learn because I have to. And this is going to help me level up as a leader, as a parent, as a friend, as a human being, and ultimately do better work down the road. Number 2 is the perseverance narrative. And the key in this is to think about other times in your life when you've had a challenge and you've risen to the occasion and you've met it and you've exceeded it, and how it ultimately, of course, led to your growth. But the key is to think about another time. It sort of grounds the narrative in a reality that you've met before. Now, if you don't have a moment that really compares to that, you can also Google it and look to history. There are lots of times where we as human beings have faced challenges that seemed insurmountable and then risen to the occasion and met that. And that can give you that momentum and that feeling of perseverance to help you keep moving forward. Number 3 is a variation of these, but it's called the catalyst narrative. Meaning that, like a cocoon, and yes, it may seem a little bit cheesy to some people, but it's actually, I think, one of the most powerful narratives when it comes to being more resilient to change. Is this change or this situation, this challenge is helping transform me like a caterpillar in the cocoon that becomes a butterfly. It's actually a catalyst experience that I need to go through as a leader to come out on the other side. You look at JFK and the Bay of Pigs invasion, where we, the country and the president faced dire situations, and this actually was a catalyst for his leadership and in the U.S. and for the U.S. And there's lots of examples in history where this catalyst approach makes a huge impact. So it's like you're being transformed into something bigger, and it really is a powerful narrative that can help you become more resilient in the most challenging of situations. And I told you I was going to share with you a big personal example of how this all plays out in terms of number 3. So during COVID, I had a lot of training engagements lined up in person, keynotes lined up. I had a lot of in-person events. And when the lockdown happened and COVID started really picking up momentum in the US, a lot of this stuff just went away. I had to change this narrative around because I needed to become more resilient so I could press forward. So I'm going to share with you how I applied these. Number 1, the growth narrative. I knew I needed to use this experience to grow. Yes, I had created a successful business model and impact model through these in-person mechanisms, but I could begin to embrace more virtual techniques and strategies to reach people. And this was going to require some growth, but I knew myself and my team, we could get there. Number 2, the perseverance model. I look back on other times when I was just kickstarting my business and some other challenges I had in my career, and we had tackled those successfully. And so I knew that this COVID challenge was something that we could also tackle. And I knew that we had the right team together to make it happen. The third one is ultimately the transformation narrative, where now we've transformed. We have the CEO Sessions podcast, where we're engaging with CEOs and helping bring their wisdom to the table. It's not just about the wisdom and insights that we're bringing teaching. We're helping bring other people's insights to the front. Also, we began much more virtual delivery, and including working with event planners to deliver more virtual content that can be high impact. And then ultimately, this YouTube channel is a great example of becoming resilient through a transformative narrative, because here we are today, YouTube videos coming right to you. This channel in this way didn't exist before the COVID challenge. Has ultimately transformed our business to leverage our ideas, to get the teaching out there, and what the difference and the impact that we're trying to make for you into this virtual mechanism that you can watch when it's convenient and get more of it. So I'm going to quickly roll through these tips and then leave you with one more parting thought. First of all, let's differentiate and make the difference between stress versus strain and make sure you're in the growth zone. 2 is just to increase your sleep and your rest by 30 minutes a day. And 3 is to craft a more helpful narrative. Now, if you like these strategies and tips and you found either one of them helpful, make sure you stick around for the next video where I'm going to give you even more tips to boost your resilience for yourself, your team, and your organization.